Okay, wait a second. Just a second. I'm gonna pin myself. Okay. Hi, this is Ali Al-Kwaldi presenting my paper as segmentation structures, a structural analysis of the Imam Sajjad's monologue of hopefuls. Let's start with the statement of problem. The gap in this study can be determined, can be acknowledged when understanding an Arabic rhetorical theory called the order system. This theory stated that the uniquity of a religious text or any other text can be determined when investigating the uniquity, the sequence of its elements, the sequence of the element of the target text. Three Arabic rhetorical independent disciplines were invented from this theory, and later on, those disciplines shaped the body of Arabic rhetoric over centuries until today. Unfortunately, the Arabic concepts under those disciplines were investigated and studied individually, separated from the textual context, which means that those disciplines, along with their concepts, didn't meet their purpose, studying the sequence of the elements of a text. That's why this study came to fill in this gap, to study the sequence. In addition, the present study chose to study a religious text for two reasons. First, the main purpose of the order system theory was to investigate, to study religious texts. Second, religious texts have been seen to be rich of rhetorical concepts, especially the Islamic supplication and the Islamic monologue. And this leads us to these two terms, supplication and monologue. What is monologue? An Islamic monologue is a supplication genre which is used to speak toward Allah in private. And what is supplication? An Islamic supplication is a formal speech that can be defined as a prayer. The most famous Islamic monologues are what's called the 15 monologues. And the present study investigated one of those 15 monologues. It's called the monologue of hopefuls, which refers to the people who hope or who have hope toward Allah. And this is a translation of the Arabic title Munajatul Rajin by Imam Sajjad. The present study carried out two research questions. First, how are utterances, segments, and other speech units in a monologue cohesively and coherently linked to each other in a sequence? What are segments? A discourse segment is a series of utterances or sequences of related clauses or sentences. The discussion of this discourse segmentation leads to what's called segment markers. Those are links that tie utterances, clauses, and sentences together in one segment. And this takes us to the second research question. Can concepts invented in the traditional Arabic rhetoric be used as tools to identify those links? In order to identify those links, 5 Arabic rhetorical concepts were borrowed as tools: the clause type, the pragmatic function, the clause type, the conjunctive particle, which means and, parallelism, assonance, and the pragmatic function. Parallelism refers to the repetition of the syntactic structures among sentences, and assonance refers to the repetition of the rhyme of those sentences. Let's illustrate the meaning of parallelism. Right here on this slide, we have 3 underlined sentences, and each one of them contains 2 words. The first word is a third person singular past tense verb, And the second word is a plural nominal subject. And that's why those three sentences are considered having parallelism. In order to detect these five devices, five concepts, the results analyzed three different levels of the target monologue, analyzing utterances within their segments, analyzing segments within higher units, and analyzing these three units of speech, utterances, segments, and higher units within the target monologue in order to detect the sequence of those units of speech. In terms of the first level, analyzing utterances within their segments, four Arabic rhetorical devices have been found to work as linkers to tie those utterances within their segments: the clause type, the conjunctive particle wa, parallelism, and assonance. And this indicated that those four devices worked as segment markers. And in terms of the second level, analyzing segments within higher units, two devices have been found to work as linkers to tie segments within higher units, the loss type and the pragmatic function. And in terms of the third level, analyzing these three units of speech, utterances, segments, and higher units within the target monologue, the pragmatic function has been found to tie those different units of speech within the target monologue in a hierarchical organization. And this takes us to the discussion section. The discussion section tied previous research with findings from present study. 4 points were highlighted. First, the present study supported previous research, which suggested to investigate the discourse segmentation by applying a hierarchical model. The present study denoted that different units of speech worked in the target text in a hierarchical shape. Second, previous research indicated that the mechanisms of repetition in the Islamic supplication worked as semantic strategies to deliver the meaning, while the present study denoted that some mechanisms of repetition worked as semiotic strategies to tie different units of speech together. Third, previous research stated that studying a way of speak to Allah and give him a request in religious texts, and especially the Islamic supplication, would be problematic. And the present study discovered one way of speak to Allah and give him a request to us by employing the pragmatic functions in order to ease and comfort the request. And finally, previous research suggested to investigate, to study religious texts by applying linguistic theories in order to uncover the functional features of those texts. And that's what the present study did by applying a discourse segmentation model in terms of structural analysis framework, a structural analysis framework, and the findings could be taken as functional features of the Islamic monologue as a supplication, as a subgenre of the Islamic supplication. Now let's revisit the research questions before going to the major conclusion. First, how are utterances, segments, and other speech units in a monologue cohesively and coherently linked to each other in a sequence? Second, can concepts invented in the traditional Arabic rhetoric be used as tools to identify those links? In conclusion, the present study indicated that 4 Arabic rhetorical concepts worked as devices, worked as segment markers: the clause type, the conjunctive particle, which means and, parallelism, and assonance. And 2 devices or 2 concepts worked as unit markers: the clause type and the pragmatic function. And the pragmatic function tied different units of speech in the target monologue in a hierarchical organization. Unfortunately, the present study faced a major limitation because only one Islamic monologue were studied, and that's why the findings couldn't be generalized to other Islamic monologues. And this takes us to the last section, where the present study offered some suggestions for future research. Three major suggestions were offered. The first one was related to investigating other Arabic rhetorical concepts. The second one was related to uh, applying a discourse segmentation model, and the third one was related to studying the Islamic monologue. First, the present study suggested to investigate other Arabic rhetorical concepts such as antonyms, synonyms, backward, and the binary of the first and the second person pronoun, because some neighbor utterances have been found to have those concepts as devices to link between them, to tie between them. Second, in terms of applying a discourse segmentation model, the present study suggested to investigate the harmony of utterances within their segments, as well as investigating the uniquity of one segment or one unit. Finally, the present study suggested to study the Islamic monologue in order to uncover the functional features of the Islamic monologue as a subgenre of the Islamic supplication, as well as investigating the request of the Islamic monologues. Finally, the present study suggested to investigate the other 14 monologues in order to be able to generalize their findings to all Islamic monologues. Those are my works cited. Thank you for listening. And now I will open the floor up for some questions.
Thank you very much. There are a couple of questions. The first question is there a work that you personally would like to apply this, that you would personally like to try to apply this to?
What do you mean by work? Well, I would do the same method on the other 14 monologues, as well as I will expand the strategies or the devices I used, because I wanted to add more devices when studying those monologues. If this is the question is about.
Yes, I think they were asking, is there, you use the monologues this time, is there another piece of work that you would like to apply this
yeah,
to?
yeah, I'm targeting 2 more supplications. That's why. Yeah.
Thank you. And the other question is, how do you think this would work if you did it outside of the monologue? So it seemed to work on the monologues. What if you chose another genre?
Oh yeah, actually, I did this because I wanted to find some similarities with another genre. It is the Quranic text. So I might go to see if there are some similar. It should be. I believe. I think it should have some similarities with the text, the Quranic text.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Our next speaker is Kevin. And Kevin, are you able to share